Salutations readers, welcome back to the State of Go Writer channel. My name is Nkechi, and for today I am doing my September and October wrap-up video. So, September and October, they were months where it was autumn, and now it doesn't feel like it anymore. If you've been living in the Midwest, I don't know, I think if you've been living in the Midwest, you know what I'm talking about, especially in Minnesota. Like, Halloween, y'all. I'm not recording this on Halloween, but on Halloween it snowed, and I did shovel, and I did not like it. It wasn't a lot of snow, but there was still snow. Most of it has melted now, but I'm not here for that. Not here for that, like, at all. So, yeah, our autumn was like 6 weeks, so maybe even less than that, actually. It might have just been straight 4. And yeah, and then for this, I don't know, September and October was really a weird reading months for me. For the most part, quality-wise, as far as my reading has been good, but as far as stuff outside of that, not so much. And especially if you've been following along with the news regarding with the ongoing genocide and ethnic cleansing in Palestine, and then we find out that has been happening with the Congo, Sudan, and Tigray. Our world is just feeling like it's on fire right now. Also, even other than that, I don't know, it's just been really, really weird. Even with content-wise. Like, I had ideas for videos that I wanted to do, but they were failed. I started them, I delete them, I finish them, and I delete them. I've even had some reading slumps in between. Not like too many reading slumps, more like week-long ones, but still, I don't like those. I don't like feeling slumpy at any point. Also, I did record this wrap-up video initially one time, but I just didn't feel like editing it, so then I just deleted it. And I'm just like, well, we're here. So yeah, now I'm just redoing this, and I'm not gonna do the Jan Agaton method for this video. So sorry for anyone who likes that version. Not doing it in this one. So yeah, we're just gonna go through the months, these 2 months, and just, yeah, we're just gonna go through it. So we'll start with September. September was one of my more well-read months. I read 12 books, about 2,487 pages when I was reading the physical or ebook. And then for audiobook, 59.22 hours. It was a lot, and my average reading was 4.1 stars. So it was still a very good reading month, and I even found like the best book I read that month. So yeah, let's actually just get into the books I read in September. And I'll just go in order of when I read them. So first up, I have She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. I read this via audio. This one was 4 stars. This is the first book in the Radiant Emperor duology, which is pretty much just a queer historical fantasy retelling / reimagining of the rise of the Ming Emperor. But in that, at least generally speaking, but we are following a young girl who was told that she was destined for nothing. Well, her brother, Chu Chongba, was destined for greatness, but then young girl's brother and father died, and the young girl decided to take her brother's name to be now Chu Chongba. And yeah, just following like her rise to greatness pretty much. And we also have General Ouyang, who is a eunuch for the Mongols, going on what he be doing. And yeah, I did really enjoy this one. I gave this one like 3.75, 4 stars. It was really much enjoyable. I did indeed like it. Natalie Naudis narrates the audiobook, so I definitely do recommend the audiobook. I just wish I had it physically though, because there was just so many names. And I do remember when I did used to own it physically, that there was a map, and I think that map would have also helped me with some things. But for the most part, I enjoyed the plot. I think the characters were good. Yeah, I really like the exploration of gender, sexuality, especially in this historical setting. Yeah, I think the parts that I really didn't quite like is really, and I'm not quite like, because I don't think it was like badly written or anything. I think this is a well-written, I think it's a solid first book in duology, and I think it's a really good plot. I'm just not really quite into military fantasy anymore. But for what the story is, I think it's good. And I've already started reading the sequel, He Who Drowned the World. I think I'll finish it. I definitely will finish it in November, so y'all will find that out in the next wrap-up. So yeah, She Who Became the Sun. Then I've read and finally finished this long-ass book that took me months to read, The Spirit Cuts Through Water. I already have a dedicated book review video for it, so really all my thoughts, feelings, opinions are really in that video. Honestly, I'll link in the description. This one is like straight up 5 stars, best book of the year. This is a story within a story within a story. Simon Jimenez's sophomore novel. Simon Jimenez is an automatic bot. It's an auto-buy author, auto-read author, and one of my favorite authors of all time now. So yes, and I've already annotated as well. So please, indeed, please read this book. I want more people to read it. Just look at my book review video. I already talked about it enough, so... And I do recommend it either physically or an ebook. Like, read it with your eyeballs. Don't listen to the audiobook. I don't recommend the audiobook at all. Multi-layered story, but definitely something that you best read with your eyeballs. So physical, ebook, whichever one. Not so much the audiobook. Just to let y'all know. Then I read a book. Actually, this was a hybrid read. I read Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. I don't remember the name of the narrator, but actually, no, wait. There were actually 3 narrators, because for the most part, this is a young adult queer sci-fi dystopia novel. This is also a debut novel from like last year. And this is also horror. I forgot this is also a horror book, where we're following a 16-year-old trans boy named Benji who's running away from a cult that raised him, which that cult said and unleashed an Armageddon that decimated the world's population. Hence it being dystopian. But then Benji is rescued by a group of teens from a queer center. But then somehow they're going to use Benji as a way to kind of like save the queer center or world or something because of this Armageddon thing. And Benji was experimented on. It's a whole thing, y'all. It's a whole thing. But I do recommend this one. I loved this book. First foray into this kind of a story. And the exploration of like religious trauma in this book, I think, was handled really, really well with such care. And actually... something about this book that I really wish more books did more often is that there is a letter from the author that does provide you with content warnings. So content warnings for graphic violence, transphobia, domestic and religious abuse, self-injury, and attempted suicide. Yes, I think that's the best list of content warnings, because trust me, y'all, even if you don't search it up, at least the book provides you content warnings. So, if it feels a little bit heavy for you, that's okay. Take your time with it, but I definitely recommend it, and I loved it. I gave it 4.75 stars. There was just a little bit, I think with the writing a little bit, I'm just like, not quite there, but it's so, so good, though. I'm like, this is a really, really good young adult book, a really good young adult debut. Like, I definitely recommend it, and I've even bought the author's sophomore novel and new release, The Spirit Bears His Teeth, and when I'm back in a horror mood, I will read that book, but... yeah, Hell Followed With Us. Highly recommend. Then I read The Death I Gave Him by M.X. Liu. This was actually a slightly anticipated release when I found out that this was a queer sci-fi retelling of Hamlet. This came out in September, and I got it as an e-arc. So thank you to Solaris Rebellion Publishing for the e-arc and NetGalley. This one is pretty much plot-wise is sort of similar to the actual play, the Shakespearean play Hamlet, but we're just taking place in a futuristic Denmark, and it's a locked room thriller where Hayden, who is the Hamlet character's dad, died mysteriously, and they're trying to figure out who did it, but then it's locked room because it's taking place in a lab where Hayden and his dad were trying to figure out how to like create like the serum thing to go against death, pretty much, immortality, which is pretty much it's a pretty big theme, I think, if I'm remembering correctly from Hamlet. And I think, yeah, so there's that, and then there's this AI named Horatio, so they're not there. And then there's the Ophelia character named Felicia, and there's the uncle character, which I'm already blanking on his name. And yeah, I did enjoy this one. I did like it. I gave it 3.75 stars. I think it was really... I'm going to say this much. I have never really read a locked room thriller before. I'm not really big into thrillers. Although, I have so far this year anyways, I have started to dabble into a sci-fi thriller. And I think this is a pretty solid sci-fi thriller. I mean, granted, it is indeed a Hamlet retelling. And, so if you know certain things about Hamlet, certain things are not going to be that surprising. But I think the way that the author kind of twists some things regarding some character stuff, I think it was really cool. I like the concepts and most of the execution of it. My main problem was really the queerness, honestly. And not because I don't think the book wasn't queer at all. No, there is aspects of queerness in the book. I personally felt like the queerness regarding with Hayden specifically and Horatio, I felt like it wasn't strong enough. But I also think it's also because of the fact that it was so fast paced, because of how much time it takes place in the book. It's a pretty short amount of time. It's only been several hours, honestly, like a night. And I'm just like, that's not really enough time for me as a reader to be like completely sold on these characters. Sure, in like a thematic sense. I mean, also because I loved reading Hamlet in school. But other than that, I don't think they're that quite as strong. But I still think this was a solid enough debut, and I would recommend to at least give it a try, because it's also mixed media. But as far as the queerness of the story, I felt like that part was kind of lacking. And also didn't help either that Horatio was an AI that's pretty much in control of like the lab and stuff. So I'm just like, you know, certain dynamics is just not gonna really work for me. And even the dynamic between Hayden and Felicia, it's just, some of it worked, some of it didn't. But for the most part, I really like the idea. I rated it a little bit higher because like I like the idea, I like the ambition of it. I think this was a solid enough debut. I recommend it, but yeah, slightly disappointing, to be honest. Then I moved on to just an audiobook read, and even a book I borrowed from my library as well, called Sabrina and Corina Stories. And the author's name is literally escaping me, unfortunately. I've never actually heard of this author, but I just saw this in my library. I was just walking around my library, and I saw a display, and it had this short story collection. And I saw on Libby that the audiobook was available, because I really like reading. I love reading short story collections, but I also love reading them physically and with an audiobook. Or if I don't have this physical copy, then I'll at least go with the audiobook. And I definitely did like the audiobook because it actually had multiple narrators. So this one's just a short story collection following various indigenous Latina women who live in Colorado. And I think the stories were really, I liked the stories. They were even the ones I really liked. I think my favorite was definitely like the actual titular Sabrina and Corina. It definitely talked a lot about like domestic abuse, domestic violence, things, aspects of being a daughter, motherhood, pregnancy, a little, all that stuff there. So yeah, definitely check content warnings on Sabrina and Corina short story collection. But I liked it. I'd give it 3.25 stars. It wasn't like bad or anything. I at least recommend to give it a try, and I also did like the author's writing, so I definitely would like to try something from this author in the future, like a full-length novel. But yeah, I don't know, I just feel like the short stories itself, I think maybe I'm just missing something. I think I'm the one who's missing something. I don't think it's really the short story collection's fault. I think it's just a me problem, honestly, because there's some things about the short stories I wasn't quite, I don't know, just something is missing. I don't know what it is, but I think that's more of a me problem. I don't know if it's the short story collection itself, because I'm not totally sure what it is. But yeah, I recommend it if y'all want to give it a shot, at least via audio, because there are multiple narrators, and there's actually a narrator for each of the short stories. So yeah, highly recommend it. And then on to more audiobook, physical book hybrid read venture. I read the sequel to Akata Witch called Akata Warrior by Nydia Okorafor. So again, it's the sequel in the DVD script series. This one we are following Sunny, Urlu, Sasha, and Chi-Chi in another adventure, pretty similar to Akata Witch, but like with more expansion, of course, regarding the leopard world, and more about Sunny being a leopard person now, and trying to balance that out with her family as well. I can't quite remember the specific adventure now, because it's been a while, but I do remember enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars, same rating as Akata Witch, because there's just certain aspects of it that, like, you know, there's still the same things that I really enjoyed in Akata Witch, but I was hoping it'll be a little bit different. So I don't know. But and also there's a love triangle thing regarding with Chi-Chi and Sasha and Sunny's older brother, and I'm just like, did that really need to be here? That did not need to be here, but whatever. It came out in the mid 2010s, so it makes sense. But also, if you get the physical copy, if you actually read it physically, it does provide you with, like, a prologue kind of chapter-ish where it, like, recounts the events of the first book. So if you're someone who likes a book with, like, a recap of, like, hey, what happened in the previous book? I can't quite remember. Check out Akata Warrior, okay? Read Akata Witch, then read Akata Warrior. Really, really good. And then I moved on to just a physical read with Dig Deep by River Solomon. This is the final River Solomon book I have now read, so I've now read everything by River Solomon, and I can confirm that River Solomon is indeed a new favorite author for me. This novella, actually, it's pretty short. It's less than 175 pages, but this is definitely a novella. So this one we are following Yetu, who is holding the memory of her people, who are the Wanjaru, who are descendants of pregnant African slave women thrown overboard by slave owners, and they live their lives pretty much in the deep, the very deep ocean. So their past is just too painful to remember, so that everything has just been remembered by just one person, and that's actually a lot. So this is talking about a lot, very heavy on generational trauma. So definitely check content warnings in this one, but I really, really enjoyed it. River Solomon's writing is so just good. It's vivid, It's not, I don't want to say quite lyrical, but it's definitely emotional, and you can really feel what these characters are always feeling. And the way that we're talking about generational trauma, I think is really, really fascinating, but also a deeply emotional read, especially in the actual concept of having descendants of pregnant African slave women, like, just when they're overthrown by their slave owners, like, that as a comment, like Black Mermaids, like, and that kind of concept, like, wow, that is a concept. And I think this book just did a great job with that. I give this one 4.5 stars. Definitely recommend it. It's short. It's a quick read. As far as, like, since I've now read all of River Solomon's works, I do think that you could possibly start with The Deep first, and then maybe get to the other 2 full-length novels. But this one, I think, is definitely an emotional one. It's a heavy emotional read, so fair warning on this one. But hey, give it a shot, you know. Then I just moved on to some nonfiction from a friend here on the channel, Harry on Hook. We have No One Ruined Your Childhood. I think this essay collection came out this year. Yeah, I think it came out earlier this year. And this is a collection of personal essays surrounding the bigotry of entertainment that is supposedly for all ages. Now, if any of y'all have been here on my channel since last year, y'all know that I have already read and reviewed Harryana's debut essay collection, You're Not Crucial, talking about her personal experience as being an extra in the film industry. Now, this is just regarding bigotry in the entertainment industry, specifically in family entertainment, because that's part of her niche. She is indeed a YouTuber here, so I will also link her channel down below so y'all can, like, watch her videos, support her, and all that stuff. Also, I'll link down her shop below as well, so if y'all can get a physical copy, if there aren't sold out, there probably are, or an ebook, audiobook, and all that stuff. So links in the description for all that. I pretty much really enjoyed this one, actually. This one's short, and just like in You're Not Crucial, the writing style is pretty much straightforward, blunt, in your face, tells you what it is, and I appreciate that. I've always appreciated, but I really do appreciate that with Harryana, and that's just how she speaks, that's how she talks. So it makes sense when you read it. That's pretty much like, when I read it, I can, like, imagine it in Harryana's voice, and, like, talking about the bigotry of the entertainment industry. And for the most part, this is stuff that I'm, like, quite familiar with, but that's because I've been engaged with her channel and her content for a while now. So a lot of this stuff is pretty much just makes sense to me. So that's why I really recommend this one. I do recommend, like, reading, you don't have to necessarily read the essay collection in order or anything, but if you're someone who's more new to maybe her kind of content, you could start with No One Ruined Your Childhood as, like, a basis start. There's, like, a general idea of, like, the entertainment industry and the bigotry within it. So yeah, definitely recommend this one. And this was indeed personally sent to me by Harryana as well, so thank you, Harryana. And I do also have her most recent essay collection called Do Not Call Me Sis as well, and I do hope to read that soon. And that was actually a collab with Amaya Janelle, so yeah, check that one out too. But yeah, I definitely do recommend No One Ruined Your Childhood. I didn't rate this one because I'm no longer rating nonfiction books. I'm just not doing that anymore. I'm just reading them for knowledge base and just educating myself, and we're just gonna move on from there. But yeah, recommend No One Ruined Your Childhood. Then, this is a book that I initially started off as, like, a advanced listening copy from Tor and NetGalley, but then I got a physical copy from Book of the Month because it was a Book of the Month pick. So I was like, oh, I enjoyed it enough, I might as well just get a physical copy. And I was like, I kind of want to see if maybe I can reread it. Talk about the popular Starling House by Alexi Harrow. This one is about Opal, who was an orphan and actually high school dropout, but she's determined for a better life for her younger brother Jasper. And this takes place in Eden, Kentucky. But Eden, Kentucky is a town that is known for bad luck, and East Starling, who was a reclusive 19th century author of the Underland who disappeared over 100 years ago. And all she's left behind are just dark rumors. But now we have Opal, who's always been obsessed with this one book, and she decides to take a chance to pretty much be like a housekeeper / maid for Starling House, because she meets Arthur Starling. And Arthur Starling has secrets of his own. So yeah, it's pretty much just the mystery of Starling House. This is a gothic fantasy book. It's indeed a standalone as well. And yeah, I did enjoy this one when I was reading it via audio. Natalie Nautis also narrates that audiobook. You're gonna be hearing me talking about Natalie Nautis a lot in this video, okay? Like, I've just been reading a lot of some audiobooks where she's been narrating books. It is what it is. I definitely did enjoy this one. I liked it. I kind of hoped I came in with a slightly different expectations, because I knew it would be gothic, fairy, not quite fairy tale per se, but like gothic fantasy, and I was really hoping it was gonna lean more horror or more dark leaning, but it doesn't quite lean in that way. So that's why I gave it more like 3.75 stars, but I still really enjoyed it, and I still also recommend it as well, but definitely look at Content Warnings, though. I do remember there's death of a parent, and there's some other Content Warnings, but I'm already blanking on them right now. But as far as the story itself, I do enjoy this one. I really like the writing. I think the writing is definitely a strong suit in here. The thing, though, I wasn't quite sold on was Opal's character. I think she was a solid enough character, but her personality was a little bit more like, I can kind of take it or leave it kind of thing. And then the romance between her and Arthur, I think was also just fine. Nothing problem. I don't think there's a problem with it. I'm just like, I don't think I can, like, take it or leave it. But hey, I still enjoyed it for what it was. So yeah, I definitely do recommend Starling House. And I don't know, maybe I'll read more by Alexi Haro. Not totally sure. Maybe I'll just read this one book. So that's Starling House. But speaking of another gothic book that I read recently, that's also a house book, is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. This one I already have a dedicated reading vlog for, so yeah, check that out in the description. But this is a debut novel, gothic literary suspense novel. This one has usually been compared to with Bunny by Mona Awad. It's very much weird. It's very much gothic. We're following Inez, who enters Catherine House's prestigious college, and they're there for like 3 years, and it's really weird. There's even this really weird sci-fi element if you ever start reading into it, but it's not quite sci-fi because it doesn't want to explain that because there's an open ending. And at the end of the video, I actually did not rate this book at all. It was just really for the experience, and I still have not decided to rate it because some days I'm just like, this was like a 2.5 experience, but then other days I'm like, well, this was like a solid 4 stars, or maybe even 4.5 even. But I'm just like, honestly, I don't even know. I'm just leaving it unrated. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure if it's an if, but I do think it's a when, because at least towards the end of the little bit of this paperback here, it is talking about like behind the book and a little bit of a author interview and stuff. But to the looks of it, Elizabeth Thomas is working on a second novel, and whenever that second novel comes out, I do hope it's a gothic one, because I will read more from this author, especially if it's gothic fiction. Like, Elizabeth Thomas nailed the suspense, the gothic suspense here. Like, nailed it. I just wish the ending had some more of a solid conclusion, but you know, I'm not usually the kind of reader who reads open endings. I knew going in would be an open ending, but I was like kind of hoping that maybe I would like feel differently about it, but I don't know. I'm just like, I don't know where I land. No idea, but hey, I really enjoyed it, so that's at least some good thing. I recommend it to at least give it a shot. I heard the audiobook was good. I didn't quite like the audiobook, but I heard the audiobook was good, especially with the chanting, so if you're an audiobook listener, check out the audiobook. And then another book I read, I borrowed it from my library. I actually did it as a hybrid read as well, with the audiobook and the physical book. It was Noor by Nnedi Okorafor. This is my first foray into Nnedi Okorafor's adult books. And this one's specifically more sci-fi. It's a little bit on the shorter side. I kind of wish it was a little bit longer. And I'm blanking on the synopsis. I just know this takes place in a futuristic Nigeria with finding a young woman who went through a lot of alterations of her body with metal, and I think she meets a Fulani man who in the desert for some reason, because of the Nigerian government corrupt with some sort of thing, doing some sort of technology. Honestly, I can't quite remember it, which kind of makes sense for how much that book stuck with me. I gave it 3.5 stars. I think it was a solid book for when I read it, but now I'm just like really blanking on everything. I'm blanking on like character arcs and world. I'm like, I don't know. This wasn't quite a memorable read for me. I'll still read more of Nnedi Okorafor's adult work for sure, because I still think that there is something regarding how she writes sci-fi that I find it very interesting. I do feel like it was kind of a little dense and a little confusing despite how short it was. But I don't know, if I start reading more of it, I think I'll start getting used to it. But so far, her fantasy, at least the young adult fantasy anyways, I've really been loving. So I'll try with her adult sci-fi and her even adult fantasy if she's written any. But yeah, this it's not over for me with Nnedi Okorafor with her adult works. We're gonna try it again. Noor was just the one I'm just like, I don't know where I land with you. And then finally, for the month of September, I have A Corruption of Blood by Ambrose Paré. You've been watching me for a while now. This is the third. I've been reading this mystery series for a while now. This is the third book in the Raven Fisher M. Simpson mystery series. So this one takes place in Edinburgh, 1850. We're following our characters Will Brave and Sarah Fisher. There's two kind of mysteries, honestly, because there have been remains of a human child found in the dock, and then there's a man that was murdered, and there was a man that was framed for it. Trying to figure out who's the true murderer. and all that, and yeah, they have to work together, and yeah, I really did love this one, just like I loved every other installment, but this was another 4.75 for me, unfortunately, and because I just felt I felt petty, but also I felt a little bit hurt, because there's a certain narrative choice that these authors, if you don't know, Ambrose Parry is a husband-wife author duo. The husband is a crime fiction writer, and then the wife is has a master's or doctorate in the history of medicine, and there was this particular narrative choice regarding between like Raven and Fisher that I'm just like, why did y'all have to go that route? I didn't like that. I really don't. And I know it's gonna annoy me, I know for sure, in the fourth book, because yes, there's a fourth book called Voices of the Dead. I haven't read it yet. I'm waiting for my library to get all the copies so that I can start reading it, because like the year's almost over and I want to be caught up. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. But yes, I still loved it though, regardless. I still love the writing, I still love the medical content, the mystery, how the plot twists, and trying to figure out all the plot reveals, and like all the mystery reveals and all that, and then the growing tensions and feelings between Raven and Fisher, but just certain narrative choices didn't want to go the way I wanted to go. So yet, here we are. But anyways, still good though, regardless. It is what it is. But now, let's just get on to October, because I'm going to be pretty quick. I feel like I'm going to be kind of quick on October, because I only read 9 books, which is still like a lot though, definitely a lot than I'm used to from like last year. And I did read like over 2,000 pages, but I also listened to a lot of audiobooks. This was a pretty audiobook heavy month, because I've been listening to 69.97 hours, so nearly 70 hours worth of audiobooks. That's a lot. And then I have the average rating of a solid 4 stars. So yeah, I've been listening to not just a lot of audiobooks, but also audiobooks that are longer, pretty long audiobooks. But anyways, let's just get into the books I've been reading in October. So first up, I have Foulheart Huntsman by Chloe Gong. This was my most anticipated sequel of the year, and it disappointed me. I already have a dedicated reading vlog for it. It's in the description. Cliff Note version of what disappointed me was the fact that the emotional connections between characters and the political tensions that's been going on in the plot, I felt like were completely unbalanced, not well written. And then we had cameos from the original duology, because Foulheart Huntsman is a sequel to Foul Lighted Fortune, and that's a spin-off series from These Divine Delights, and we have those characters coming here, but for the most part, emotionally flat. And also, the book was longer for what it was. Like, if you got the Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, it's nearly 600 pages, because there is a 40-page short story just for fluff, which I'm like, I don't think the short story was really necessary. I guess if you're here for the characters, sure, whatever. And I used to be, but now I'm just like, I don't give a damn. So yeah, Foulheart Huntsman, it was mostly disappointment. I give it 2.2. I know in the reading vlog I gave it 2.5, but honestly I went down to 2.25, because no, that was way closer to a solid 2-star than a 2.5. So that was a disappointing sequel, but hey, at least I finished the series, so that's nice, I guess. So after that, I've been trying to read some more young adult books to tell myself that, hey, you still like reading young adult books, so let's find young adult books that work for you. I mean, sure, I read a few young adult books, in September, but like I want to read more in October, because we did not have a good start in October. I was not happy. So, If You Could See the Sun by An Leon. So this one was a book that I initially read physically from my library, and back in April for like the first time I was doing my 100 pages, reading 100 pages a day for a week reading vlog. I'll link them below, but I did DNF that book. So I didn't have it physically, but then I saw that the audiobook was on sale via Libro FM. So I bought the audiobook, and I was like, when am I ever going to read this? Should I have bought this audiobook? And I'm glad I bought the audiobook, because I really enjoyed the audiobook. It was narrated by Natalie Nadas. Again, this one is a young adult contemporary magical realism book, where we're following a high school student in Beijing named Alice, who is a scholarship kid in this very elite, highly advanced school, and her family her parents are having a hard time paying for the school fees and the tuition because of how costly it was. But then eventually one day she starts turning invisible, and she decides like, hey, since I'm turning invisible, maybe I can monetize this, because why not be a girl boss like that, trying to get her money, get the money's worth so she can stay in the school, Yeah, that's pretty much like really the plot. And it has an academic rivals to lovers as well. She does have an academic rival, and to be honest, I feel like the academic rivals to lovers romance in here was actually done pretty well, because first of all, there were actually rivals. Although I will say it's one of those academic rivals where like one of them is like, I thought this was like more family competition, and the other one's like taking it so seriously. So it's like that kind of academic rivals. But for the lovers part, I think it was fine. It's also a fast-paced story as well, so things do go pretty quickly, but I think it was well-paced for how fast it was. I definitely did like the characters. I like the story progression. I also heavily related to Alice a lot. I was like, dang, girl, you and I, we could have probably been... Could we have been friends? Well, I was a little bit close off as a teenager like that, so maybe not quite, but we probably could have been friends, because we were too similar. We were a little too similar in our academic ambitions. But yeah, I think it was good. Also, the way how she monetizes she's done some things that are indeed morally questionable. But she does suffer from consequences, which is very much appropriate. I do think the consequences she suffered were appropriate, and even some other people that made her do things because of the superpower also makes sense as well. And I also like the idea of making it more fantastical or magical realism-esque with her turning invisible because of just how she felt with herself. And yeah, I just really I had a good time with it. I give it like 4.5, 4.75. I didn't quite give it the solid 5 stars because Alice was a little too aloof for me. But if she was less aloof, honestly, I think that would have been a solid 5. But for the most part, I really just loved it. I had a great time with it. I'm going to read more from this author in the future. I'm already like looking at what other books she has released like the next year and the year after that. And the year after that. Like, I am looking forward to reading more from this author. But yeah, that's If You Could See the Sun. Definitely recommend the audiobook. Then another book I did read, and actually I finished it at the same day as If You Could See the Sun, was There Was a Country, A Personal History of Biafra by Chinua Achebe. I read it physically and audiobook from my library. Both from my library. This one is a nonfiction history memoir talking about Chinua Achebe's life, but really, it's really focusing on Biafra, which was a country that was formed in the southeastern part of the new formed post-independent Nigeria that was controlled from Great Britain, and the formation of how the Igbo people and people in the southeastern region with Igbo land and other ethnic groups wanted their own country because they felt like they weren't really Nigerians with the other ethnic groups. So they decided to make their own state. And that did not go well. In fact, there was a whole civil war that lasted about 2 years. It started from a coup that definitely escalated things. And I think there's other aspects of it, the war itself, that was very much reminiscent of things that have been going on even in our world now with Palestine, Congo, Sudan, Tigray, and where there were millions of Igbo people that were massacred throughout that 2 years of war, and how there was a lot of displacement. It was just horrible. It was horrible. It was just really, really bad. And I do wish I took my time with it, honestly, because I felt like I read it way too fast. I know that this is a part of my own family history, but it's a part of my own family history that is not talked about as extensively or personally from any of my family members. And now I have this kind of like as a baseline in my belt. I feel like maybe I could talk to my family members about this, or at least find some more further readings, but I'm definitely going to need to reread it though, for sure. But yes, but this is indeed a personal account, so this is more into Chinua Achebe's experience, what he's witnessed, what him and his colleagues and his friends have witnessed, because in the time, Chinua Achebe was also, he was still like an author, a writer, and even a journalist at that time as well, not, at least in a radio station as well, and trying to go around there, and been around journalism circles and all that. But yeah, it just sounds like it's just so, just think about how that it feels somewhat like a forgotten history, and it sucks. And that's what makes me really go so hard for like always remembering what's going, like being aware of what's going on in the world right now with Palestine, Congo, Sudan, and Tigray, because I don't want these atrocities to be forgotten. That's why it's always very important to just be aware of what's going on in the world, because history be repeating itself. And honestly, the effects of the Biafran War has definitely had brought in further corruption in the Nigerian government. It makes me sad, honestly, to hear about that. And how maybe it could have been, and maybe it could be. I'm still going to be optimistic about that. I'm not going to be pessimistic about the future of Nigeria, Nigerians, even across the diaspora like myself, but I need to be way more knowledgeable and more informed with my own history. I can't be moving in this world with this kind of ignorance. So I'm definitely going to further my knowledge on this, and this one is not rated, but I'm definitely going to reread this in the future, because I need to be aware for this, for myself. That's just how I want to be move in the world, personally. Then, and a book that's not quite as heavy, but something that feels like in a similar vein of that nonfiction book, I read Akata Woman by Nydia Corfor. So this is the sequel to, this is the next book after Akata Warrior. I read this one only via audio. I didn't get a chance to borrow it from my, borrow a physical copy from my library. So I don't know if this one also provided a recap of Akata Warrior. Probably did. That's my assumption, but I have no idea. So this one we're following, again, the same crew, but this is going to be more focusing on Sunny again, but also with Chi-Chi as well, because Sunny and Chi-Chi are taxed by a giant spider to return something of theirs that was originally stolen from Chi-Chi's people. So yeah, that was scary. I hate spiders. So imagine all the descriptions about the spider the size of a house. Ooh, y'all, that was terrifying. I was like, oh, that is so terrifying. Never. I would never. But yes, I pretty much love this one. This one I gave 4.75, almost 5 stars. I do feel like this entire series actually really is due for a reread. Like, I love reading these books this year. I really need to get copies on my shelf because, oh gosh, I am so excited for the 4th book. Because there was a revelation regarding Sunny's character with her spear face that I think was so genius, and I cannot wait to see more of that exploration in the next book. I have no idea what the next book is going to be about. I have no idea what our goal is going to be. I have no idea, but I do know that we have a 4th book, and I'm looking forward to it in another few years because there's only been a few years in between these books, so I'm just like, so I guess 2027 maybe we'll have another book? 2028? I have no idea, but anyways, I'm excited regardless. I'm going to continue on reading these books no matter how many there are or how many years in between these books are. I'm just going to keep going. So after that, I went to more physical reading a little bit. I wanted a little bit break from listening to an audiobook. So I read A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed, which I was actually pretty surprised I was going to read it that fast or that soon. But I was pretty early online, so yeah. So this one is Ava Reed's young adult debut, where we're finding Effie, who is an architectural student, but has always been a love for literature. She's the only woman in the architectural college of this university, and she won a chance to design the estate of her favorite author who wrote her favorite book. Like, she's reread it so many times, the spine's been broken, it's getting a little bit of wear and tear. Like, she loved reading and rereading that book. But she also has to deal with her academic rival. I'm going to really put this in quotes because I do remember the book marketed as Rivals to Lovers, but it's not quite the same academic rivals to lovers in the sense of, like, if you could see the sun, where they're actively rivaling each other, because Preston is a literature student, but he's also there at this manor, where he is kind of trying to find the truth of if this particular author actually wrote, like, Effie's favorite book. And, you know, Effie's a little bit defensive about that. It's like, what do you mean? You know, but then, you know, some doubt starts trickling in when some certain things that Preston finds also doesn't seem to add up. So yeah, so they reluctantly agree to work on that as well. And it's also definitely a lot of fantasy. There's a lot of talk about fae and magic and storytelling, and yeah, it also does take place in a Welsh inspired, oh no, not Welsh inspired, a alternate version of Wales, which is something that I've never really experienced, such a world like that, which is one of the things I kind of did struggle with this book, was the alternate Wales, because I'm not familiar with many things, but I think it was actually pretty cool. I just really wish there was a map. I gave it 4.25 stars. I really enjoyed it, had a good time. I loved Ava Reed's writing, so I am definitely looking forward to reading her adult work. And I did like the Rivals to Lovers romance here. I think it was pretty solid. I also really like the revelation at the end of it. I also think that the ending is a little bit optimistic for what it is, but like I like it though. But please come into knowing that there is indeed graphic sexual assault, misogyny, and sexism. There's also death of a parent is here as well. But definitely on the sexual assault, I want to put a fair warning on that. But yeah, I recommend A Study in Drowning. Just know that's more gothic fantasy, dark academia-esque, like dark academic, but not quite dark academia. But it does have that backdrop regarding analyzing a text, trying to think about literally literature, and analyzing and trying to figure out like the authenticity of an author. I think in that sense it does give academia in that sense, but not quite dark academia. So maybe like something light academia, something like that. So after that, I went into getting some of my manga, because I've been anticipating this particular manga volume for months now. Like, if y'all been here since March, I read Spy Family Volume 9, and now I've read Spy Family Volume 10. It came out on October 17th, so this one is the next volume. I'm not going to talk too much, but as you could tell from, like, at least the cover, you could tell that might seem a little bit more darker here, which I kind of thought was going to be like that for the entire volume. But only for a couple chapters we have, like, Twilight's backstory when he's a kid, and actually content warnings on his backstory on war, bombing, death. But I actually felt like his backstory was pretty short-lived, and I think it was kind of just short. It actually was one of the disappointing aspects of this particular volume. I gave it a 4-star. I still really enjoyed it, but I was really hoping it to be more mission chapters regarding Twilight's backstory. I was kind of disappointed. I like what we had, but I wish there was a little bit more detail to it, at least in certain aspects of it. Maybe a little bit more in his childhood when he would become, just some other stuff in there. But the rest, though, the other missing chapters were still good, though. We even had a pretty substantial, like, character introduction here, too. And more stuff regarding the spy stuff. And I think that was still pretty good, regardless. So, yeah, for the most part, this was good. It was still very much good. I just wish that a certain aspect of, like, the backstory here was just further expanded upon. But, again, this is more a character-driven manga series. It's not really much quite focusing on the politics, but I just wish there was a little more talk about it. But it is what it is. Right, I still recommend the series, though. It was still a good installment. Then, I continue on with my Fullmetal Alchemist journey over here, and I read Fullmetal Alchemist Omnibus Volume 7. So this is pretty much just a start of the climax of the story. This is really like a setup to, like, the last 2 omnibus volumes of the big, epic, long climax. So again, up to, like, the promised day where all the shit's gonna go down. This was really, really good. This one's 4.75 stars. It's not a solid 5 stars like I've been giving every other volume, because there's just a few aspects, small things here and there, and in between these 3 manga volumes, like 19, 20, 20, 21, that I'm just like, I did not appreciate that was there. And I don't know, there's just certain things I'm like, And also, I can definitely feel it, like, being, like, quite a setup to, like, an epic climax and conclusion. But hey, I'm still looking forward to, I'm definitely planning to finish this series this year, y'all. Like, I am not gonna go to 2024 not having finished reading the manga series. And then the last book it's not the last book I've read, but the next book that I've read that it was supposed to have a dedicated reading vlog, but I actually decided to delete the footage of it because I didn't feel like editing it, and I was just on headspace to edit it, honestly. I don't know. Again, October was really a weird month, but I did read, finally, The Mask of Mirrors by M.A. Carrick. This is the first book in the Rick and Rose trilogy. This is a book series actually I've been hearing about because of Tammy from Tammy Tries to Read, Angela from Literature Science Lands, and Heather from Hia Booktubes. I know for sure Angela and Heather loves this trilogy, and I actually recently watched Angela's Should You Read The Mask of Mirrors, hence the Brook and Rose trilogy. And actually watching that video really helped me solidify my thoughts and feelings on this particular first book anyways, and makes me more optimistic to see the rest of the series. But if you don't know what the series is about, we are following Ren, who is a con artist, who comes to the sparkling city of Nadezra. She comes in the city with one goal: to trick her way into a noble house, securing her fortune and her sister's future. But her masquerade is just one of many, and as corrupt nightmare magic begins to weave its way through the city of dreams, the poisonous feuds of his nobility and the shadowy dangers of his impoverished underbelly become tangled, with Ren at their heart. And actually, I like this one. I actually had a pretty good time with this one. It is indeed slow, which is something that really irritated me, actually, was the pacing, because the first half, it has enough to intrigue you to keep going, at least for me personally, but it just felt so slow. And I actually did try to read this initially earlier this year in August, actually, with a full-on readathon, but I had to put the book down because I borrowed it from my library and I didn't have enough time to read it, and I couldn't even renew my hold on it, so I decided just to buy my own copy. And I actually am glad I did buy my own copy, and I also borrowed the audiobook via Libby, which is narrated by Nikki Masood, and honestly, Nikki Masood did a great job with that audiobook, okay? Like, hands down. Highly recommend the audiobook, but I do recommend also at least having... maybe also look with your eyeballs too, because I do appreciate having a map of the city of Nadezra so that I know where things are. And I also appreciate having a glossary in the back, or Dramatis Personae at least, so that I can keep track of names and certain key terms in here in this world, because I do think this is like inspired by, I think it's like Venetian inspired in some way, but it's still like its own world. And I really actually liked the multiple, like, I like the layers of the story. This is a pretty layered world. And also I really liked the magic systems, because the Leganti have like astrology, and the Desrians have like, you know, they have like the astrology, but they also have like the Numenauts, which is kind of like their, you know, like the everyday things. Like they usually use it to heat up something or imbue, which is also an aspect that can be used for the Verdesrians, Nedesras, and the Legantes imbuing as well. But I also like the Varsinians, where they can use pattern deck, which is kind of like tarot, and I think that's the coolest thing. I love that. I don't know, I like anything that's inspired by tarot cards, tarot deck. Coolest thing ever, personally speaking. And I really like Ren, and I like her found family with Tass and stuff, and her also like her brother Sedge as well. I think that was really cool. I actually did like I like the certain aspects of like the Leganti nobility, but you know, they're definitely elite, and then the Viserians are the ones in the bottom. They're usually like the slums and the lower bank. And I also like characters like Dorasi Vargo. I also like Gray. I think they're really cool. And also the Rook. Like, the Rook was such an interesting character. It's such a mysterious character, too. And I'm looking forward to reading the sequel, The Liar's Knot, to read more and to see more of the Rook. Because it looks like we're going to see more of the Rook in the next book. And the book after that, of course. But I am looking forward to reading the sequel because of the Should You Read, honestly. It helped me to get a better sense of what to expect for this series, because I wasn't totally sure, because I did give this book like 4 stars, but I really wasn't sure on what to expect for the sequel, because for a long time for this book, I was not sure on like how is this going to be expanded upon into like a whole series. But to the sounds of it, each book has their contained problems, but the things that helps you continue it is really more of the characters and revelations regarding characters and their dynamics, their relationships, interactions, and particular character journeys. And honestly, I appreciate that. I think that's a good thing to know coming in, that this is, I mean, sure, it has a pretty substantial like political fantasy stuff, so a lot of the politics in here, you gotta keep track with all of that, but also you gotta be here for the characters. So if you're not here for the characters in this first book, then don't continue on. But I am gonna continue on, because I want answers, and I heard that you're gonna get some answers in the sequel, so I'm here for it regardless. And then the last book that I read in October, which is kind of like this was good but could have been better, was The Mimicking of Known Successes by Malcolm Alder. I've also heard about this because of Angela from Literature Science Alliance. This is a queer sci-fi mystery novella that is a cozy Holmesian murder mystery having a second chance sapphic romance. That's pretty much what it is. And I did try to read that physically, I think in July, and I DNF'd it. So I was like, let me try this again via audio. And I definitely had a better time with it audio, but I don't think the story was much better for me. I just had a better time absorbing it, but I felt like because I wasn't sure what the cozy vibes, because I'm not really a cozy reader at all. Cozy fantasy, quarter mystery, cozy whatever, that's not usually my thing, but I don't know, I was just feeling like, could have used another book in the month, and I finished it on Halloween, so I was like, read it in a couple sittings in one day, but whatever, it is what it is. I liked it for what it was a 3.5. I felt like the Massa and Paletti just didn't have a quite substantial character development. I know it's a novella, but I've read plenty of novellas, and I've read novellas with more substantial character development, and I felt like these characters didn't quite develop as much, especially even when their romance, I was like, I wasn't really quite sold on the romance until like the very, very end, but even then I was like, it was fine, but I liked it. I kind of recommend it, sort of, if you want to give it a shot. But that's pretty much it. That's all the books I've read in the past 2 months. And here are all of the books. Well, these are not all the books, but these are at least all the books that I have physically, and then the other half are books I borrowed from my library or I already unhauled. So, yeah, these are all the books here, at least. But anyways, yes, that's it. That's pretty much my wrap up. I've been feeling I really have been feeling all over the place with making content, but I do hope and plan that for November, I'm going to be a lot more focused on my reading, more intentional with my reading. I'm hoping to have my video plans to go through, and I don't cancel them or I don't delete them. I hope it goes through, so Fingers crossed on that. Anyways, if y'all like this video, like it, leave a comment, subscribe if you want to. If you made it this far in the video, but you're not sure what you'll comment, but you want to let me know you're here, and with emoji, you can comment down below. Okay, y'all can comment down below a house emoji in honor of Starling House and Catherine House. For some reason, I read 2 books in like the same month with house in the title. Well, why not, you know? So yeah, that's it. So again, thank you all for coming to this video. And I just hope to see you all in my next one. Bye.